We trust cops. That's just how it works. You see the badge, the uniform. Something in your brain relaxes. These are the people who are supposed to protect you. The three officers in today's video understood that better than anyone. The first one used that trust to hide in plain sight for 40 years. The second one used it to try to have 2 people murdered. And the third built an entire system around it, specifically designed to target women he knew would be too afraid to report him. If you're new here and this is your first video, subscribe before we get into it. I cover cases like these every week and you don't want to miss what's coming next.
While I lay bound and blindfolded, unclothed and freezing on the hardwood floor in front of an open door in the cold March night.
Just after my husband had left for work, and you shoved your knife into my neck?
He violated my 17-and-a-half-year-old girlfriend. She's a nice girl. You've traumatized her, Joe, so bad, she's disappeared. I don't know where she is. She can't face this.
Truly sorry to everyone I've hurt.
April 24th, 2018. Citrus Heights, California. A quiet suburb northeast of Sacramento. The kind of street where people know their neighbors by first name and leave their garage doors open on Saturday mornings. At approximately 4 p.m., a 72-year-old man steps out of his house onto his driveway. T-shirt, cargo shorts, tube socks. He has lived on this street for years. His neighbors think they know him.
He hit it well. He hit it really well. We called him a yeller, but come to find out he was a little hard of hearing. But that's not the guy that we saw around the neighborhood, you know, working on his boat. Those rocks in his front yard, he would move those and weed eat under them. And I'm like, he was really, I mean, that yard was meticulously kept up. He kept it nice.
He doesn't see the detectives until they are already moving. And when they close in, when there is nowhere to go, no calculation left to make, the first words out of his mouth are not a denial, not a question, not even silence. He looks at them and says, "I got a roast in the oven." That's it. That's the first thing the Golden State Killer says when he is caught. I want you to hold that image, because by the time we get back to this driveway, by the time we understand who this man actually was, what he did across 3 decades in 12 counties, and how a used tissue in a curbside garbage can end 44 years of one of the most methodical criminal careers in American history, that sentence is going to feel like something very different. Let me start at the beginning, not with the crimes, with the man. Bath, New York, November 8th, 1945. A small farming town in the Finger Lakes region of upstate New York, where the winters come early and the fields go flat in every direction. Joseph James DeAngelo Jr. is born here, the son of a U.S. Army sergeant named Joseph DeAngelo Sr. The family moves constantly. That's military life. Germany, then California, then somewhere else. A childhood of packed boxes and new schools and no roots anywhere. Joseph is the oldest boy. He has sisters. He is supposed to set an example. When he is 9 years old, the family is stationed at a U.S. Air Force base in West Germany. And something happens there that nobody in this family will speak about publicly for decades. In a warehouse on the base, Joseph witnesses 2 American airmen rape his 7-year-old sister Connie. He is held back and forced to watch. He cannot stop it. He is 9 years old, and the people wearing uniforms, the authority figures, the men who are supposed to represent order and safety, are doing this. His siblings would later testify in court that their father was physically abusive throughout their childhood. The house was not a safe place. The adults could not be trusted. I'm not going to tell you that what happened in West Germany explains what Joseph DeAngelo chose to do with the rest of his life. It doesn't. Millions of people survive terrible childhoods and never hurt anyone. But I want you to understand what was being assembled inside this boy. What specific combination of helplessness, rage, and a need for absolute control was being built during those years? Because when we try to make sense of the choices he made later, this is where the architecture begins. He graduates high school in 1964, enlists in the Navy, serves 22 months aboard the USS Canberra, a guided missile cruiser that deploys to the Gulf of Tonkin during Vietnam. He comes back missing part of his ring finger and something else that doesn't have a name. He enrolls at Sacramento State University. He doesn't study literature or business or engineering. He studies criminal justice. He wants to understand how crimes are committed and how they are solved. He graduates with honors. He completes a police internship in Roseville, California. On paper, a man building a life of purpose. In May 1970, at Sierra College, he meets a nursing student named Bonnie Jean Caldwell. They get engaged. By 1971, Bonnie ends it. She has seen something in him, something controlling and manipulative that other people apparently missed. After the breakup, he attempts to force her to come back. When she refuses, he threatens her with a gun. She leaves anyway. When it becomes clear the relationship is over, permanently, finally, something inside Joseph DeAngelo does not process that information the way a person should. He never processes it. He marries a different woman, Sharon Marie Huddle, in November 1973. That same year, he is hired by the Exeter Police Department in Tulare County in California's Central Valley. He is assigned to the burglary division. Let me be precise about what that means. His job, his sworn, salaried, official job as a law enforcement officer, is to study how criminals break into homes, which windows are structurally weak, which door frames can be forced quietly, which houses have dogs that might alert a neighborhood, which families leave for work at 7 a.m. every morning and don't return until 6. He is given access to crime scene reports, victim interviews, evidence photographs. He is literally, professionally, trained to think like a burglar so he can catch burglars. He is an excellent student. 11 miles from the Exeter Police Department in the neighboring city of Visalia, California, someone begins breaking into homes in the spring of 1974. The first thing investigators notice is that this person isn't taking what you'd expect. Not televisions, not the cash in a kitchen drawer, not jewelry from a nightstand. He takes coins, small trinkets, a collection of porcelain figurines, women's underwear from laundry piles. He comes back to the same houses again and again, not for things and for something else, to learn, to watch, to leave his footprint in a place and then return to confirm it was still there. He leaves no usable fingerprints. He moves through homes in complete darkness without touching a single thing out of place, unless he chooses to. He is so precise, so quiet, that some homeowners wake the next morning with no evidence he was ever there, except for the small, strange items that are missing. Between the spring of 1974 and the end of 1975, the Visalia ransacker, that's what the press called him, committed at least 120 residential burglaries. The number may be higher. Here's what I need you to sit with. During that exact same period, Officer Joseph DeAngelo of the Exeter Police Department was promoted to sergeant and placed in charge of the department's Joint Attack on Burglary program. His job was now officially to coordinate the law enforcement response to exactly the kind of crimes he was committing. He may have driven to ransacker crime scenes in an official capacity. He may have examined his own evidence. He may have sat in a room with terrified homeowners and listened to them describe a burglar he knew was himself. September 11th, 1975. Visalia. A journalism professor named Claude Snelling, 45 years old, teaches at the College of the Sequoias. He lives on a quiet residential street with his wife Arlene and their teenage daughter Beth. Earlier that year, in February, a prowler had been spotted beneath Beth's bedroom window late at night. Snelling had chased him off. The police were notified, Nothing came of it. At approximately 2 a.m. on September 11th, Snelling wakes to strange noises. He gets up. He finds the back door open. He steps outside. There's a masked man in the carport. He has 16-year-old Beth by the arm. He has a revolver. He is dragging her toward the back of the property. He has told her she is coming with him or he will stab her to death. Claude Snelling lets out a roar and runs toward them. The masked man shoves Beth to the ground, turns, and fires twice. 2 bullets, one in Claude's side, one in his chest. Claude staggers back into the house. He makes it to his wife before he collapses. He dies before the ambulance arrives. The man turns the gun on Beth, who is on the ground. Then he hits her over the head with the gun, kicks her repeatedly, and runs. Beth Snelling would say in court 45 years later, "My father caught him twice peering in my bedroom window when he came home from teaching night school and tried to chase him down but wasn't able to catch him. He's always been my hero. I would not be here today, I'm sure of it, if it hadn't been for him." Claude Snelling's murder would become the first crime Joseph DeAngelo pleaded guilty to in June 2020. The first in a criminal timeline that would span 14 years and 6 California counties. At the time he shot Snelling, he was a uniformed police officer working 11 miles away. He went to work the next morning. December 10th, 1975, 2 months after the Snelling murder. Visalia detective Bill McGowan has been working the ransacker cases for over a year. He has developed enough pattern recognition to place a specific house under surveillance. Late at night, he spots a figure leaving the property, carrying stolen items. McGowan draws his service weapon. He orders the man to stop. The man drops what he's carrying. He reaches up and removes his ski mask. He raises his hands. He appears to be complying. McGowan steps closer. The man pulls out a gun and fires. The bullet strikes McGowan's flashlight. The force of the impact injures his face, but doesn't kill him. In the darkness, before backup can arrive, the figure runs. He is gone. McGowan survives. He later describes the man as white, athletic, around 5 feet 10, with a round, baby-faced appearance. 6 months later, Joseph DeAngelo quietly transfers to the Auburn Police Department, northeast of Sacramento, on the other side of the Sierra Nevada foothills. The Visalia ransacker is never seen again. Not a single burglary after DeAngelo's departure date. And in the eastern suburbs of Sacramento, someone new appears. I want to tell you about Sacramento in the summer of 1976 before we go any further, because what happened there didn't happen in abstraction. It happened in real houses, to real families, in a city that was completely unprepared for what was coming. On June 18, 1976, at approximately 4 in the morning, a 22-year-old woman wakes up in her Sacramento bedroom and sees a shape in the doorway. She thinks it might be her father. He sometimes drives late. Then, the shape moves toward her, and she sees the ski mask and the flashlight and the knife. He jumps onto her bed. He presses the knife against her temple, near her eye. He ties her wrists behind her back with cord he brought with him. He tells her not to scream. She later says she didn't even realize at first that the knife had cut her near her eyebrow. That is the first attack Sacramento County attributes to the East Area rapist. Over the next 2.5 years, it happens 50 more times. Here is how he chose his targets. It was not random. He would move through a neighborhood for days before an attack, observing patterns. He made phone calls to houses at unusual hours. Not to say anything, just to listen, to determine if anyone was home, to calibrate his timing. He would sometimes enter a house days before the attack, not to commit any crime, but to prepare. He planted ligatures, shoelaces, lengths of rope, in kitchen drawers, tucked under sofa cushions. He checked which firearms were in the bedroom and unloaded them. He disabled phones. He had walked through every single variable that could cause the evening to go wrong. and he had addressed each one in advance. When the night came, he moved through the house in complete darkness, from memory. He had memorized the floor plan. He knew which floorboards made noise. When he woke a couple, he separated them immediately. He kept the woman in one room. He brought the man to another, and then, this detail appears in so many victim statements that investigators came to expect it, he stacked dishes on the man's back. "If I hear those dishes move," he said, "she dies." He spent hours inside homes. He ate food from the kitchen, drank beer, sat in the darkness between rooms doing nothing. Sometimes a victim would lie completely still for an hour, convinced he had finally left. And then he would come back. One survivor describes the specific sound of his breathing in the dark. Another describes the texture of the cord on her wrists for 20 years afterward. A woman named Jane Carson Sandler, attacked in October 1976.
I want you to look at me, DeAngelo, and I want you to remember what I have to say. First, I want to say, glory be to my Lord Jesus Christ for sustaining me with his peace, his love, his strength, and power over the last 44 years. Yes, DeAngelo, it's been 44 years. On October 5th, 1976, when you broke into my home in the early hours, just after my husband had left for work, and you shoved your knife into my neck, you bound my wrist and ankles, you blindfolded me, and then gagged me with a cloth. Remember that? But you also did the same to my precious 3-year-old son. How dare you? Then you repeatedly threatened to kill us. The fear escalated when you started tearing sheets and cloths, and I had no idea what you were planning to do with all that cloth. Strangle us, maybe? Yes, I was frozen in fear beyond description. My attention was not on the rape, but fully on where did you put my son when you removed him from the bed? Where did you put him? And what were you going to do to him? Yes, evil one, I turned my pain into power and my mess into a message by facilitating groups of women that had been sexually assaulted and volunteering at our Rape Crisis Center. All very worthwhile activities. Well, you know, quarter of me, being a Christian, I want to say to you, may God have mercy on your soul. But then there's another 3/4 of me that just want to tell you, buddy, to rot in hell.
On July 17th, 1976, less than a month after the first attack, 2 sisters are attacked at their Sacramento County home. One of them, 15-year-old Peggy, describes being tied so tightly that her hands remain numb for months afterward. She says that 44 years later, she still doesn't feel safe in her own home. "My God," she said at DeAngelo's sentencing, "we were just high school kids living a normal life." November 10th, 1977, Sacramento. A 13-year-old girl named Margaret Wardlow wakes to a man standing at her bedside, wearing a mask and leather gloves, shining a bright flashlight in her face. She says in an interview years later that she initially thought someone was playing a prank on her. He said, "This isn't a joke." And she says something happened inside her in that moment.
My inside voice told me, you are going to be raped, this is what's going to happen to you, and you're going to live through this, and you're going to survive, and you're going to get through it. And it was just that simple. I just knew I wasn't going to let him have what he came for, and that was to get power over me by frightening me and making me fear him. This is like the greatest gift ever. I'm so absolutely thrilled with it. I'm just tickled that they caught him. It couldn't be better news.
She is 13 years old. She has been reading about the East Area rapist in the local papers, and the fact that he hasn't killed anyone yet is the thing she focuses on to survive the night. He is in her bedroom. She is 13. and her survival strategy is to remember that so far, he hasn't killed anyone. December 18th, 1976. A 15-year-old girl named Chris Pedretti is home alone. Her parents are at a Christmas party. A man in a ski mask enters the house. He puts a knife to her throat. He spends more than 2 hours inside. At some point, he leans close to her and says, "Do what I say, or I'll kill you and be gone in the dark."
Your Honor, my name is Chris Pedretti, and thank you for allowing me to share the impact that Joseph James DeAngelo had on me the night he raped and threatened constantly to kill me. As the evening began on December 18th, 1976, I was a normal 15-year-old kid. I loved going to school, having sleepovers, and going to church. It was 1 week away from Christmas. Our house was decorated, and I was having fun Christmas shopping for my friends and my family. My world was small, predictable, and safe. But by the time that night came to an end, my world changed forever. My safety was shattered as a masked man, DeAngelo, yielding a knife, told me he would kill me if I didn't do what he demanded. He raped me repeatedly, moving me in and out of the house after each time. He made himself comfortable in my home, and he stole my family's personal belongings as I lay helpless or sat tied, gagged, blindfolded, and naked in the cold December night, waiting for what unthinkable act he would violate me with next. He tormented me, and he told me over and over again he would kill me, and I believed him. At 3 different times that night, I thought I was going to die. I sang "Jesus Loves Me" in my head as I waited to die. The next morning, December 19th, I woke up knowing I would never be a child again. And although I was truly grateful to be alive, I also felt that I had died. I didn't understand what had just happened or why it happened. I didn't understand what kind of God would allow this to happen to me when I tried so hard to be good. I didn't understand why I didn't have friends anymore, or why my parents told me to never talk about that day, the day I was raped, tormented, and accepted that it would be my last.
That sentence, those exact words, they will become the title of a book written by a woman in Chicago who will spend the last years of her life trying to find this man, and who will die before she sees what her work makes possible. But I'll get to her. By 1977, the Sacramento community has fully absorbed what is happening. People are sleeping with loaded firearms beside their beds, they're buying dogs, they're installing deadbolts and window locks. The Sacramento Bee is running weekly stories. Law enforcement holds community meetings. None of it stops anything. In December 1977, the East Area rapist sends letters. He mails them to the Sacramento Bee, to the Sacramento mayor's office, and to television station KVIE. Inside each envelope is a poem he has written. He calls it Excitement's Crave. Among the lines, Sacramento should make an offer to make a movie of my life that will pay for my planned exile. He wants to be famous enough to bargain with. In March 1977, the Sacramento County Sheriff's Office receives phone calls from a man claiming to be the East Area rapist. One call ends with the caller laughing and hanging up. Another says, "I'm the East Side rapist and I have my next victim already stalked and you guys can't catch me." On December 10th, 1977, the same date 2 years earlier that McGowan nearly caught him in Visalia, calls are made to police saying, "I'm going to hit tonight, Watt Avenue." Law enforcement floods the area with patrols. At 2:30 a.m., A masked man on a bicycle is spotted on the Watt Avenue Bridge. Officers pursue. He ditches the bicycle and vanishes on foot. He is playing with them. He wants them to know they cannot stop him. By early 1978, he has begun calling previous victims at their homes, not to say anything in particular, to let them know he remembers them. Some of these calls continue until the year 2001. He calls women he attacked 25 years earlier to remind them that he is still out there, still in control. February 2nd, 1978, Thursday evening. Rancho Cordova, a Sacramento suburb, a neighborhood where multiple East Area rapist attacks have already occurred. A couple named Brian and Katie Maggiore go out for an evening walk with their dog after dinner. Brian is 21 years old. He works as an administrative specialist at Mather Air Force Base. Katie is 20. They have been married less than 2 years. Their friends describe them as warm, easy people, the kind of couple that makes a room more comfortable just by being in it. Something happens on that walk. Witnesses see the couple running, then 2 gunshots. Brian is hit first and goes down. Katie runs. She screams for help, loud enough for witnesses to hear. She makes it half a block. DeAngelo catches her. He shoots her in the head. They are found in a stranger's backyard. Their dog wanders alone. A shoelace, the same type used as a ligature in East Area rapist attacks, is found nearby. Investigators believe the Maggiores crossed paths with DeAngelo while he was prowling the neighborhood, that they may have seen his face, and that he made the only calculation that felt logical to him in that moment. He eliminated the variable. Their case would sit in a separate file for decades, unconnected to the East Area Rapist series. It would not be officially linked until 2016. July 1979. DeAngelo is caught shoplifting at a drugstore in Citrus Heights. He is 33 years old, a uniformed police officer. The stolen items, a hammer and a can of dog repellent. A hammer for forcing windows. Dog repellent to silence animals before they can alert a neighborhood. When security detained him, he pretended to have a heart attack, fought them until they had to tie him to a chair, then rolled around screaming incoherently when deputies arrived. He later admitted to a detective that he had faked the whole episode to avoid getting in trouble. He is fired from the Auburn Police Department that October. During the termination process, he threatens to kill the chief of police. He then drives to the chief's house. He parks outside and watches it. His police career is over. The East Area Rapist attacks in Sacramento County stop the same month. He finds other work, eventually as a truck mechanic at a Save Mart distribution warehouse in Roseville. He will show up to that warehouse every day for the next 27 years. His co-workers describe him as quiet, average, unremarkable. He never smiles much. He doesn't make friends. He goes home at the end of the shift. But he is not done. In the months after losing his badge, he moves his attention south. Different cities, different victims, different method, because now he is no longer just assaulting. Now he is killing? December 30th, 1979. Goleta, California, a small city adjacent to Santa Barbara. A psychiatrist named Robert Offerman, 44, and his girlfriend Deborah Manning, 35, are found dead in Offerman's condominium. Both bound, both bludgeoned. No one connects this to Sacramento. Different county, different investigators, different filing system. March 13th, 1980. Ventura County. An attorney named Lyman Smith, 43, and his wife Charlene, 33, are found dead in their bedroom. Lyman's 12-year-old son arrives home from a sleepover and discovers them. They are bound with a drapery cord and beaten with a log from the fireplace. A 12-year-old boy, home from a sleepover. That's who finds them. August 19th, 1980. Dana Point, Orange County. Inside a gated community called Niguel Shores, the kind of development with a security entrance, the kind of place built around the idea that its walls mean something. Keith Harrington is 24 years old, in his 4th year of medical school at UC Irvine. He is on track to graduate early in December. His wife Patrice is 28, a registered pediatric nurse. They have been married 3 months. Keith's father arrives for what was planned as a family dinner. He finds them face down in their bed. The medical examiner cannot definitively establish cause of death. The injuries are too severe. Keith's older brother, Bruce Harrington, spends the years that follow trying to build something from the wreckage. He testifies before the California State Assembly. He personally funds a California ballot initiative, Proposition 69, to expand DNA collection from convicted felons statewide. He spends close to $2 million of his own money. He is trying to construct a system that will eventually make identification possible for this killer, for any killer. He has no idea that the specific technology that will eventually catch DeAngelo doesn't exist yet. And when it arrives, it will not be the system Bruce Harrington built. It will be something stranger and more precise. February 6th, 1981. Irvine. A 28-year-old loan officer named Manuela Vitun is home alone. Her husband David is in the hospital with a serious illness. She is found by her mother the following morning. David Vitun spends years telling himself, if he had been home, she would be alive. The guilt is something he carries long after the investigation closes without answers. July 27th, 1981. Goleta again. A 35-year-old woman named Sherry Domingo is house-sitting at her aunt's property on Toltec Way. Her boyfriend, Gregory Sanchez, 27, is visiting. They met at the same technology firm. Evidence at the scene suggests Sanchez tried to fight back. He is shot and beaten more than 20 times. Sherry is bound and beaten more than 10 times. Sherry's daughter, Debbie.
The good news is that as I learned more and more and started interacting with people who were also passionately seeking answers, my mission evolved. For the first time in my life, I had clear-headed laser focus on an important goal. I was no longer just an orphaned daughter without a shred of hope. I became a voice and an advocate for the many, many victims in this series of crimes. I don't know if DeAngelo was ever aware of my efforts to find him out. But if he didn't know my name before, he'll know it now. Today I am Debbie Domingo McMullen, surviving daughter of Sherry Domingo, whose murderer now has a name and a face. I am no longer plagued by images of a masked, faceless monster raping, terrorizing, and bludgeoning my beautiful mother. I am not that lost teenager anymore. Today, I am in the room with the pathetic excuse of a man who will now finally be held accountable for his actions. If I had my way, he would be shivering, blindfolded, naked, and exposed every moment from now on. I'll settle for caged, shackled, humiliated. Oh, and nervous as hell, because everyone around him in prison will know exactly who he is and what deplorable things he has done. Today, the devil loses and justice wins.
Gives an interview years later. She says she spent the entire first year after her mother's death waiting for a phone call from investigators, a lead, an update, anything. It never came. Her hope disappeared within 12 months, and she spent the next 2 decades resigned to the idea that it would never be solved. May 5th, 1986. Irvine. An 18-year-old named Janelle Cruz is killed in her family's home while her parents are vacationing in Mexico. She is the last known victim of the Golden State Killer. And then, nothing. The attacks stop. Not because he is caught. Not because he makes a mistake. They simply stop. He is 40 years old. He has a wife, 3 daughters, a job at the Save Mart warehouse. He drives to Roseville, works his shift, drives home. 3 separate jurisdictions, 3 separate names, 3 separate stacks of files in 3 separate evidence rooms. The Visalia ransacker, the East Area rapist, the original Night Stalker. Nobody makes the connection because there is no common language, no shared database, no single detective who has seen all 3 sets of files at the same time. For the next 15 years, nothing. In 2001, something finally shifts. Forensic analysts in California complete a comparison they have been working toward for years. DNA samples from East Area rapist crime scenes in Northern California against DNA from original Night Stalker murders in the South. Different counties, different evidence rooms, different case numbers, same person, identical DNA signature. For the first time, law enforcement officially understands that all of it, Sacramento to Santa Barbara to Orange County, is one man. 13 murders, 51 rapes, 120 burglaries, 1 biological profile still unidentified. That same year, a woman in Chicago named Michelle McNamara stumbles across an online article about an unidentified California serial killer. She cannot stop reading. I need to tell you who Michelle McNamara was, because she matters to this story as much as any detective or forensic analyst. She is not a law enforcement professional. She is a journalist, born on April 14, 1970, in Oak Park, Illinois, the youngest child in an Irish Catholic family. When Michelle was 14 years old, a woman named Kathleen Lombardo was murdered just blocks from her family's home. The killer was never found. Michelle walked to the spot 2 days later and picked up pieces of the victim's shattered Walkman from the ground. She would later write, "What gripped me was the specter of that question mark where the killer's face would be. The hollow gap of his identity seemed violently powerful to me." She earned a degree in English from Notre Dame and an MFA in creative writing from the University of Minnesota. She moved to Los Angeles. She wrote television pilots. She sold scripts. She started a blog called True Crime Diary, where she wrote about cold cases the way a researcher writes, obsessively, precisely, with deep empathy for victims. She met comedian Patton Oswalt at one of his shows in 2002. She touched his arm on the way out and said quietly, "Irish girls. Nice." They married in 2005 and had a daughter named Alice in 2009. When she finds the Golden State Killer case in 2001, she starts reading everything that exists. Then she reads everything that doesn't officially exist: forum posts, amateur research threads, scanned documents shared between citizen investigators who have spent years on this case in their spare time. She reaches out to detectives, carefully, slowly, by building trust, one conversation at a time, and never breaking it when they share sensitive information. She travels to California. She visits crime scenes. She builds a community of researchers online, people as consumed by this case as she is. In 2013, she publishes a piece in Los Angeles Magazine. It's the first time most Americans outside California have encountered this case at its full scale. And in that piece, she gives him a name: the Golden State Killer. That name does something no official designation had done before. It becomes an umbrella term, one phrase that ties together the Visalia ransacker, the East Area rapist, and the original Night Stalker under a single identity that everyone can use. Journalists in Sacramento and journalists in Orange County and journalists in Santa Barbara are now writing about the same person. The case goes national. The audience grows. The pressure on law enforcement grows. She signs a book deal with HarperCollins. She is going to write the full account, and the work consumes her. She works at night. After Alice is in bed, in a playroom, she is converted into a research space. She makes playlists of music from the 1970s to put herself in the mindset of the era. She sleeps badly. She loses weight. She pushes through anxiety because she believes the answer is somewhere in the files. And she is not going to stop until she finds it. Her insomnia gets worse. She begins waking up in the middle of the night, convinced she has heard suspicious sounds outside. A neighbor taking out the trash, Patton heading to bed. She cannot turn it off. She had accumulated 3,500 files on the Golden State Killer. Dozens of notebooks, thousands of pages of digitized police reports. On April 21st, 2016, Patton Oswalt finds Michelle McNamara unresponsive in their bedroom. She is 46 years old. The autopsy finds a combination of prescription medications in her system: Adderall, fentanyl, and Xanax. Combined with an undiagnosed heart condition, atherosclerosis, her heart simply stopped. The coroner rules it accidental overdose. Several of the medications were not prescribed to her, an addiction she had hidden. Oswalt and the documentary's director would later acknowledge this publicly. She had a 7-year-old daughter. She had a book 2/3 complete. She had 44 years of someone else's crimes embedded in her memory. She never sees the arrest. Her research partner Paul Haynes and journalist Billy Jensen work with Oswalt to reconstruct the manuscript from her files. They find chapters out of order, voluminous notes, rough drafts, and fragments. Things she knew but hadn't yet figured out how to say. They do not rewrite her. They sequence her. The book they assemble is hers. I'll Be Gone in the Dark is published on February 27, 2018. The title comes from those words spoken to 15-year-old Chris Pedretti in December 1976. It reaches number 1 on the combined print and ebook New York Times bestseller list. It stays on the list for 15 weeks. 57 days after publication, investigators knock on a door in Citrus Heights. Let me tell you exactly how they got there. In December 2017, Detective Paul Holes, who's been working the Golden State Killer case for more than 20 years across multiple jurisdictions, and an FBI attorney named Steve Kramer make a decision that has never been made before in a major American criminal investigation. They upload the killer's DNA profile to a civilian website called GEDmatch. GEDmatch is not a law enforcement database. It is a genealogy platform built for people who have taken mail-in ancestry tests and want to find distant relatives, trace family trees back through centuries. The people whose DNA is in GEDmatch submitted it voluntarily to learn things like what percentage of their ancestry is from Scandinavia, or whether they share ancestors with someone from Ireland. They are not criminals. They are not suspects. They are people who wanted to know where they came from. The upload to GEDmatch identifies between 10 and 20 people who share DNA with the unknown suspect at the level of great-great-great-great-grandparents. These are not close relatives. They may never have met him. They share common ancestors born in the early 1800s. A forensic genealogist named Barbara Ray Venter takes those matches and begins building a family tree. She goes backward first to the 1800s and then forward through generations, branch by branch, eliminating women, eliminating people with incompatible ages or locations, narrowing and narrowing. She is looking for a white male, born around 1945, with connections to Northern California. By March 2018, after months of meticulous reconstruction, the tree points to 2 men. One is ruled out. The other is Joseph James DeAngelo. Now understand what happens next, because this is where 44 years of calculated invisibility meets something DeAngelo could not have prepared for. Because the technology literally did not exist when he committed his last crime in 1986. Investigators place Canyon Oak Drive under surveillance. They watch DeAngelo move through his ordinary days. He goes to the store, He tends his yard. He argues with neighbors about where the property line is. From the outside, a retired old man with precise habits. On March 18th, 2018, Paul Holz's last day of work before his retirement after 3 decades as an investigator. He drives to Citrus Heights alone and sits outside DeAngelo's house. He watches him through the window. He decides not to approach. One wrong move, and 44 years of waiting becomes nothing. He drives away. He retires without making the arrest. Less than a month later, the surveillance team recovers DNA from the handle of DeAngelo's car. Then, from his curbside garbage can, they retrieve a used tissue. They run both samples against the Golden State Killer's DNA profile. Both match. On April 24, 2018, Sacramento County Sheriff's deputies converge on the driveway at 8316 Canyon Oak Drive. Joseph James DeAngelo steps outside. T-shirt, cargo shorts, tube socks. He doesn't fight. He doesn't run. He looks at the men closing in from multiple directions and says, "I got a roast in the oven." They tell him someone will take care of it. He is handcuffed on his own driveway. His neighbor down the street sees the police tape going up and assumes he is having the driveway repaved. Later that day, DeAngelo is placed in a holding cell with cameras and microphones running around the clock. He does not know the cell is being recorded. Alone, sitting quietly, he begins to speak to himself. Sacramento County Prosecutor Thien Ho would later read his exact words into the court record. "I did all that. I didn't have the strength to push him out. He made me. He went with me. It was like in my head, he's a part of me. I didn't want to do those things. I pushed Jerry out and had a happy life. I did all those things. I destroyed all their lives. So now I've got to pay the price." Not, "I didn't do it." Not a question, not silence. I did all those things. I destroyed all their lives. Prosecutors believed the performance was calculated, a setup for an insanity defense or an attempt to manipulate them. DeAngelo had done exactly this before. When security detained him for shoplifting in 1979, he faked a heart attack, fought them until they had to restrain him to a chair, then screamed incoherently when police arrived. He later admitted he'd been pretending the whole time. He had been wearing masks his entire life. The cell was just another one. In June 2020, Joseph James DeAngelo pleads guilty to 13 counts of first-degree murder. He admits to 161 total crimes against 48 victims spanning from 1974 to 1986. In exchange for the plea, prosecutors take the death penalty off the table. He is 74 years old. The sentencing hearing runs for 4 days in August 2020, held at California State University, Sacramento, because the courthouse is too small to accommodate everyone who needs to be there. Survivors and victims' family members are given unlimited time to speak. Some of them have been waiting for this for 44 years. Some had given up expecting it would ever happen. A woman named Jane Carson Sandler, attacked in 1976 while she slept with her 3-year-old son, addresses the court, "44 years I've waited to hear him plead guilty. That's a long time. But I went from being a victim to a survivor to a thriver." A woman who was 15 years old when DeAngelo came for her says she spent 40 years afraid he still knew where she lived. "I began to be afraid that my rapist was still aware of who I was and where I lived and what I did. I never got over the thought that he might return." One survivor stands at the podium and says directly to DeAngelo, "I have lived in his prison for 40 years. Today, I am free." One victim's sister, who had waited decades for this moment, tells the court that after the arrest, she could finally do something she hadn't been able to do in over 30 years. She could unlock her bedroom door. DeAngelo sits through all of it in a wheelchair, wearing a white face mask. Then he stands. He removes the mask. He looks out at the people in the courtroom.
I've listened to all your statements, each one of them. And I'm truly sorry to everyone I've hurt. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, sir.
The people he attacked, the children of people he killed, the detectives who spent careers on this case, the daughter of Claude Snelling who watched her father die saving her. He says, "I've listened to all your statements, each one of them, and I'm truly sorry to everyone I have hurt." Lead prosecutor Tien Ho looks across the room at the first known rape victim, now in her 60s, who had been diagnosed with cancer and was undergoing chemotherapy during the hearings. She had made it. She is still there. He later describes something in her eyes that he hadn't seen before, a brightness. He turns to DeAngelo. He tells him the death penalty has been taken off the table. And then he says, "Oh, by the way, do you remember the roast in the oven the day you were arrested? The only roast you'll experience now is when you roast in hell, because that's where you're going." 11 consecutive life sentences. No possibility of parole.
The aggregate sentence for Joseph James DeAngelo is the following. For counts 2 and 14 through 13, he's committed to the state prison for the indeterminate term of 11 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. The sentence to run consecutive to the indeterminate life term for count 26. The weapons enhancements in counts 4, 5, 7, and 26 consist of an aggregate determinate term of 8 years to run consecutive. Another way to state the sentence is as follows. Mr. DeAngelo is sentenced to a total of 11 life without the possibility of parole sentences, plus an additional life sentence, plus an additional 8 years. This is the absolute maximum sentence the court is able to impose under the law. And while the court has no power to make a determination of where the defendant is imprisoned, the survivors have spoken clearly. The defendant deserves no mercy.
Joseph James DeAngelo is currently held at California State Prison, Corcoran. Let me tell you what I keep coming back to. He had 3 daughters. His eldest, when asked about him, described him as a perfect father. His wife believed his explanations for coming home late. He coached youth football. His yard was the neatest on the block, the driveway marked with permanent paint lines showing exactly where each vehicle should park. Precise, controlled, everything in its designated place. Prosecutor Tien Ho, reflecting on the case later, said this: "When he was a retired mechanic living in Citrus Heights, that was a mask. His family was a mask. He was constantly wearing a mask. The only time you were able to see a glimpse of the true Joseph DeAngelo was in his cell in those moments." Then Ho added something else. While surveillance footage showed DeAngelo entering his cell walking slowly, leaning on a cane, looking frail. The moment the cell door closed, he put the cane down and walked just fine, even in a jail cell, still performing. What ended 44 years of undetected crime was not a tip. It was not a witness. It was not a lucky break. It was a tissue in a garbage can, and a genealogy website built for people who wanted to find their cousins. And before that, a name given by a woman in a Chicago playroom working at night after her daughter went to bed, who never stopped believing the answer was there. Michelle McNamara coined Golden State Killer in 2013. That name gave investigators across 3 jurisdictions a common language. It gave the public a way to understand the full scope. It kept the case alive during the years when it might have gone dormant again. She died 2 years before the arrest, at 46, with her daughter Alice 7 years old, with the answer somewhere in the 3,500 files she had accumulated. She never got to see it. And here's the last thing I want to leave you with. In that holding cell, alone, DeAngelo said, "I pushed Jerry out and had a happy life. 44 years, a wife, 3 daughters, 27 years at the same warehouse job, neighbors who waved to him from across the street. He believed that was a happy life." Standing in his driveway at 72 in his t-shirt and tube socks, he told detectives about a roast in the oven, as if it were just another afternoon, as if 44 years were simply a thing that had occurred, and now someone needed to go inside and turn down the heat before dinner burned. So tell me, and I genuinely want to know what you think in the comments. The people closest to him, his daughters, his neighbors, his co-workers. They all describe the same man, quiet, precise, controlled, unremarkable. What would it actually take to see someone clearly when they have spent their entire life making sure that you cannot? And is it actually possible, that some people are simply invisible to us? Because Joseph DeAngelo walked past the people he had hurt every day, on the same roads, in the same grocery stores, for 44 years.
Okay, so that was a man who hid behind the badge for 4 decades and nobody had a clue. But our next case flips it completely. This isn't someone hiding. This is a decorated NYPD officer, a woman who spent her career in the domestic violence unit, who decided the law simply didn't apply to her. And what she did next is honestly one of the wildest things I've come across in this whole genre.
How you doing, ma'am? How you doing? I'm Detective Finnegan, Suffolk County Police Department. This is my partner, Detective Fandry.
Hi.
Is your husband Isaiah Cavallo?
Yeah.
Okay. Is it okay if we come in for a minute?
Yeah.
Mind having a seat for me, please? I'm sorry to be the one to tell you that Isaiah was found dead this morning.
Are you kidding me? Like, sure, like he's not at the hospital or something?
Yes,
like,
ma'am.
what do you mean?
Valerie, you know we wouldn't show up and knock on anybody's door without being 100%, okay? Crime scene's there, the medical examiner's there.
Wait,
I know, I'm sorry.
I don't even believe you. Like,
We're
what?
sorry.
This just like doesn't feel real right now to me. I'm sorry. Like, I can't really believe this. I'm a cop. Like, I can't believe this.
You are a cop?
Yes.
Where? In the city?
Yes. Oh my God. I'm trying to help you as like a cop, but I just.
Valerie, I don't need you to be a cop right now, okay? You can be a wife and a mother, okay?
This is going to happen this weekend. I'm telling you, it's going to happen this weekend. And who do you want to go first? Is that or her?
Why are you asking me? Who do you want to go first?
It is a Friday morning in May 2019. Long Island, New York. Oceanside. A quiet, residential neighborhood, the kind of place where the biggest problem most mornings is traffic on the parkway. A Suffolk County police cruiser pulls up to a house on a tree-lined street. 2 detectives step out. They adjust their jackets, they walk to the front door. They knock. A woman answers. She is 34 years old. Dark hair. Still looks sharp, even off-duty. The kind of face you would describe as strong, confident. The face of someone used to being the one asking the questions. The detectives tell her there has been an incident. They tell her that her estranged husband, Isaiah Cavallo Jr., was found in his car near a marina. Shot. Dead. And then she reacts. The body cam is rolling. Every second of it is captured. She collapses. She wails. She sobs so hard that her whole body shakes. "Are you kidding me?" she screams over and over. "This doesn't feel real right now." Her boyfriend is standing right there, watching her fall apart. He knows the truth. The detectives know the truth. The FBI agents waiting around the corner know the truth. Isaiah Cavallo is alive. He spent that morning sitting in a car at a marina, hunching forward into the passenger seat while federal agents scattered broken glass on the floor around him. They were staging a photograph his wife had been waiting for months, because she ordered it. She ordered his death. And in about 4 minutes, while she is still standing there performing a grief that should not be possible, her boyfriend will turn to her. He is wearing a wire. And she will calmly begin telling him exactly how to destroy the evidence. Stay with me on this one, because there is a 13-year-old girl involved. There is a service weapon pointed at someone's face. There are matching tattoos. And there is a woman who spent 12 years teaching other people how to recognize danger. And she could not see it in the mirror. This is the story of Valerie Cincinelli. New York City police officer, decorated cop, mother of 2, a woman who swore an oath to protect and serve, and then withdrew $7,000 in cash and gave it to a man she believed would kill 2 people for her. One of them was a child. Let me take you back to where this begins. To understand what Valerie Cincinelli became, you have to understand what she was first, because the contrast is the whole point. She joined the New York City Police Department in 2007. She was in her early 20s. She worked out of the 106th Precinct in Queens, one of the busier houses in the borough, covering neighborhoods like Howard Beach and Ozone Park. Blue-collar streets, heavy foot traffic, real police work. And here's the part that almost stops you when you read it the first time. She worked domestic violence cases. Valerie Cincinelli spent years responding to homes where someone was hurting someone they claimed to love. She took the reports. She made the arrests. She sat at kitchen tables with frightened people and told them they were safe now.
Oh my God!
I know this is a very difficult time, okay? This is a very, very early ongoing investigation, okay? And as I'm sure you do understand, the more information we can get sooner, it's better for
Sit
your
down.
husband.
Yes, sit. I have a 5-year-old with him.
Is the 5-year-old here?
He's at school. Yeah.
So do you have maybe like a box of tissues you can bring for
Did you get
Miss
something for
Cincinnati?
her?
Would you like some water?
Yeah. I'm trying to help you as like a cop, but I just.
Valerie, I don't need you to be a cop right now. Okay, you can be a wife and a mother. Okay, but I do need you to try to answer some of these questions. You don't know of anybody that would want to harm him? Anyone want to hurt your husband?
No.
Is there any like financial problems? No drugs, alcohol, gambling bets, anything like that?
I know. The only thing I know, but it's like I don't want to like.
She was the officer they called when home had become the most dangerous place in the world. She was good at it. Colleagues respected her. In June of 2017, she was awarded Cop of the Month by the Jamaica Rotary. Her name was on a plaque somewhere. Her father, a proud man who would later stand outside his Long Island house and tell reporters his daughter was innocent, he had that plaque memorized. But inside, something was already burning. Valerie was always on a roller coaster. A man named John DeRuba would later tell Dateline. When Valerie was good, she was unbelievable, but then the next day, she would be somebody you didn't know. We will get to John DeRuba very soon, because you have not heard a character like this one. But first, the marriage. The cracks start there, and the cracks are everywhere if you know where to look. Around 2014, Valerie met Isaiah Carvalho Jr. Isaiah was a regular guy, not a cop, not connected to law enforcement, just a man from the neighborhood, working an ordinary life. They got together, they got married, they had a son. On paper, it looked like a life, a real one. But something was already wrong before the wedding photos faded. And this is a detail that almost never makes it into the coverage, and it matters more than anything. Court records later revealed that in 2014, the same year, roughly the same period, Valerie's first husband had obtained a restraining order against her. Her first husband. Read that sentence again. Before Isaiah, before DeRuba, before the hitman and the gold coins and the wire. Her first husband had already been to a courthouse and asked a judge for paper protection from her. That tells you the pattern did not start in 2019. It did not start with a divorce or a new boyfriend. It had been there for a very long time. The only reason it stayed hidden is because the woman it belonged to wore a badge. By 2017, the marriage to Isaiah was fracturing. The arguments were constant. There were domestic incidents serious enough that the NYPD put Valerie on modified duty. That phrase deserves translation. It means she was stripped of her badge, stripped of her firearm, pulled off the street, reassigned to a desk unit. Specifically, she ended up in Viper, the Video Interactive Patrol Enhanced Response Unit. Officers in Viper sit in a room and monitor security cameras in public housing buildings. According to ABC7, the unit is largely made up of officers on modified duty due to other infractions. It is not glamorous. It is not what you imagine when you put on the uniform at 22 years old. It was, in many ways, a slow, public humiliation, a demotion without the name. And then, on top of everything else, she met him. January of 2017, Queens, New York. A man is outside his home, washing his car. He is 52 years old, bald, a single father, raising a teenage daughter, divorced, a guy with a bakery in Orange County that, according to the New York Post, was a hangout for a couple of character actors from The Sopranos. That kind of neighborhood. I want to be honest with you about Deruba, because this story is not a clean one. He is not a hero. He has a rap sheet of his own, a felony grand larceny charge, and a separate plea deal where he admitted to receiving stolen property. He is a complicated man in a complicated life. And on that January day in 2017, he is washing his car when a police cruiser rolls past and stops. The officer in the passenger seat leans out the window, introduces herself. I start joking around with her, Deruba would later recall. I go, "Are you single?" She says, "No, I'm not single, I'm married." And then her partner leaned over and said, "Well, she's not happily married." That is how it started. A cop, a cruiser, a partner's joke about a dying marriage. "I think it was love at first sight," Deruba said later. For the next 2 years, they conducted a secret affair, hushed phone calls, hotel meetings, declarations of love, and text messages that would eventually end up in federal court filings. And Valerie, this is the detail, introduced Deruba to her own children. But she did it under a false name. She called herself Mary when she was around them with him. That way, if the kids ever mentioned Mommy's friend to Isaiah, the name Mary would not register as anyone real. Think about the level of control that requires. You are running 2 complete lives in parallel, and you are training your own children to call you by a different name to protect the secret. A cop's instincts turned inward. Deruba had his own 14-year-old daughter. Valerie had met her. At the start, the girl was just another person in the room, pleasant, quiet, normal. Here's what Valerie told Deruba about her marriage to Isaiah over and over. He was abusive. He was verbally cruel. He ignored their children. He played video games instead of being a father. He frightened her. She was trapped. Deruba believed her. Why wouldn't he? She was a cop. She worked domestic violence cases. Who would know the signs better than her? Now, the truth about Isaiah Carvalho. Because eventually, much later, Deruba would sit across from Isaiah at a restaurant and find out for himself. Isaiah was not a monster. He was not an abuser. He was a man in a difficult marriage, yes. He had pleaded guilty to a disorderly conduct violation in one 2017 incident, a moment involving Valerie's hand and her phone falling to the ground. But the pattern of abuse that Valerie described, years of it, constant fear, verbal cruelty, there is no evidence it ever existed. It was a narrative. It was a story she told to the man she was sleeping with, and it served a very specific function. Because people who have been abused are people you do not judge. People who have been abused are people whose darkest thoughts you might, possibly, one day listen to without flinching. She was building the permission structure a full year before the cash, a full 2 years before the gold coins, laying the emotional architecture that would one day make it possible to ask a man to arrange 2 killings. That is not impulse. That is not a roller coaster. That is something else entirely. And then, in 2017, on a day that seemed ordinary until it wasn't, the mask slipped for the first time. DeRuba drove to Valerie's house. He was surprised to see Isaiah's car in the driveway. Over the phone, Valerie told him to park a block away and wait. "Watch the show," she said, according to DeRuba. Her attorney would later deny she ever used those words. A police cruiser pulled up. Other officers, her colleagues. Isaiah Carvalho was led out of his own home in handcuffs. He was being arrested for allegedly striking Valerie's hand, causing her phone to fall to the ground. That was the entire accusation. A hand, a phone, a disorderly conduct violation. DeRuba watched from down the street. When Valerie came out of the house and got into his car, she was electric with a kind of energy he had never seen in her. Not relief, not fear, something closer to victory. But even that was not the first real red flag. There was something else that year that should have stopped the relationship cold, and almost nobody talks about it. In 2017, Valerie Cincinelli was disciplined by the NYPD for sharing confidential police information with John DeRuba. Confidential information from NYPD databases handed to a civilian boyfriend. Think about what that means. She was using her badge, her access, her position as a gift for him. A woman whose entire job was trusting the system was already betraying that system for a man she had known less than a year. The pattern is not jealousy. The pattern is something older than that. Whatever Valerie Cincinelli wanted in any given moment, she took. The badge was just a tool. And then, almost 1 year into their relationship, something else happened. DeRuba got a text message from his daughter. Nothing unusual, just a normal text from a teenager to her dad. Valerie saw his phone light up. She asked who it was. DeRuba did not want an argument. He said it was an email. And Valerie reached into her waistband and pulled out her service weapon. She pointed it at his face. "If you ever lie to me again," she said, "I'll blow your head off." He was not smiling. He was not the one in control. A veteran NYPD officer was holding a loaded firearm 6 inches from his nose because he had told a white lie about a text from his teenage daughter. DeRuba did what most people in his position would not have the courage to do. He went to the police. He reported her. Her gun was confiscated. She was placed under investigation. That is when the modified duty assignment became permanent. The relationship appeared to be over. But it wasn't over, not even close. Between late 2017 and early 2018, court filings show Cincinelli and DeRuba each took out protective orders against the other. Back and forth, breaking it, getting arrested, making up, breaking it again. And in March of 2018, Valerie violated one of those orders. She called him. When he did not pick up, she was arrested for aggravated harassment and criminal contempt. And then she called him again. And she said something that gets quoted in court records, and if you read it out loud, you cannot quite believe it came from a human mouth. "You ruined my life. You'll see what happens to you. You better keep your mouth shut. I hope your daughter dies. I hope your daughter dies." Sit with that sentence for 1 second. This is a woman whose career was domestic violence. A woman who had held crying mothers and told them the system would protect them. Telling the father of a 14-year-old girl that she hoped his child would die. That was March 2018. The hitman was February 2019. 11 months later. She showed up to the hearing on the harassment charges, and when DeRuba saw her across the courtroom, her eyes locked on his, her chin up, that magnetic thing she did. He told the judge he had lied. He said he had made it all up. The charges were dismissed. And just like that, Valerie Cincinelli was back in his life. In January of 2019, Isaiah Carvalho filed for divorce. This wasn't a surprise. The marriage had been effectively over for years. But the legal reality of it landed differently than Valerie expected. Because of the divorce, she would have to share her NYPD pension. She had spent 12 years building that pension. Through the bad assignments, the modified duty, the humiliation of the desk job, the pension was the one concrete thing she still had from all of it. And now, a judge was going to take a pair of scissors and cut it in half. There was also a custody battle over their son. Isaiah wanted to be a father. He was not going anywhere. The walls were closing in from every direction. And DeRuba, her safety valve, her escape, was pulling away again. He was buying his daughter new things, Louis Vuitton bags, Ugg boots, weekly fake nails at the salon, expensive gifts for a girl in middle school. And Valerie, this is documented in court filings, would say things to him like, "Why are you going to the mall with your daughter buying her things and not buying me and my kids things?" A grown woman, resenting a 14-year-old child for getting gifts from her own father. Prosecutors would later describe what was building inside Valerie Cincinelli as deep-seated jealousy and resentment. That is the clinical language, the legal language. But here is what it actually looked like in practice. Federal investigators would eventually find something on her phone that is hard to process. 130 separate internet searches. That is how many times Valerie Cincinelli cyberstalked DeRuba's 13-year-old daughter. 130 searches. The girl's social media, her routines, her location. A grown woman, a police officer, conducting a months-long digital surveillance operation against a teenager whose only offense was being loved by her father. In court documents, prosecutors quote the language Valerie used about the girl in her conversations with DeRuba. I am not going to repeat the words. They are brutal. The kind of language you would never expect from someone who spent 12 years carrying a badge. But I will say this, she dehumanized the child completely, in her own voice, on recordings that would later be played in federal court.
Well, last Sunday he scoped it out. He went down there. He searched where they were. He found where they were. He searched where Isaiah was, and he was looking for them. That's what he did. Like, what do you want me to do?
I don't give a. Do whatever you want.
I think Isaiah, I think it's very suspicious. On one weekend, they're both dead.
Okay, so take care of yours, and then wait a month.
Take care of my daughter this weekend, kill her this weekend, and then wait a month for him? Like, well, what do you...
Yeah, or a week. What do you want me to tell you? What do you want to talk about, Colin? What do you want to talk about?
A text message from the night.
Oh, a text message saying what?
This weekend.
So let me see it.
No, he texted me earlier. I erased it. I don't want to keep it on my phone. Listen, I'm really stressed out about this. Stop. You're
really stressed out about this?
Yeah.
Every week it's going to happen and nothing happens.
It's going to happen this weekend. I'm telling you. It's going to happen this weekend.
Yeah, what's your symptoms?
Who do you want to go first? Isaiah or her?
Why are you asking me? Who do you want to go first?
Where's my mother?
Okay. Well, it doesn't end.
When it's right. Then it's going to happen. I'm really stressed out.
That is the context for what happened in February of 2019. Valerie drove to a bank on Long Island. She walked inside and withdrew $7,000 in cash. All at once, one transaction. She put the money in her bag, and she drove to John DeRuba. She gave him the cash, and she told him to find someone to kill Isaiah Carvalho and his teenage daughter. The plan was specific. Isaiah would be killed near his place of work in Holtzville, Long Island, staged to look like a botched robbery in a bad part of town. Isaiah sold fireworks as a side business, and Valerie thought that was a convenient angle. A man killed for the cash from his fireworks sales, random, impersonal, nothing pointing back to a wife. In her own words, on recordings prosecutors later played in court. The killing would not look suspicious because the murder would take place in the hood or the ghetto. The girl was more urgent. Valerie suggested she be shot near her school in New Jersey, or if that was too visible, hit by a car, made to look like an accident. Deruba took the money, and he converted that $7,000 into gold coins because she had insisted on gold, untraceable in her mind. A police officer's thinking. Cash leaves a paper trail, but gold passes from hand to hand and disappears. And here's where the story deviates from the clean Hollywood version, because Deruba did not immediately drive to the FBI with a conscience full of purpose. That is the version people tell. That is the version that sounds good, but it is not what happened. According to Fox News and court documents, Deruba was arrested for another crime around this time. And it was only after that arrest, facing his own legal problems, that he confessed to the murder-for-hire plot and agreed to cooperate with the FBI. It does not entirely change the calculus. The FBI still needed him. He still wore the wire, and he still walked ultimately because he did the one thing that mattered. He protected his daughter. But the man who went to the feds was not a saint. He was a man with leverage on both sides of the table, making a deal. The FBI did not just take Deruba's statement and move in. They did not arrest Valerie on conspiracy charges that week. They asked him a question with only one right answer. Will you go back in? Will you wear a device? Will you play the role of the devoted boyfriend who is arranging 2 murders? He said yes. For the next 3 months, John Deruba returned to Valerie Cincinelli's life like nothing had changed. He was warm. He was attentive. He played the role of a man about to solve all of her problems. He played it so well that, and this is a detail that stops the heart every time, at some point during the sting, the two of them got matching tattoos. Till death. His suggestion, he said later, part of the cover, part of the performance. And she said yes, happily, enthusiastically. A woman who had just paid $7,000 to have him dead within the year. His daughter, too, sitting in a tattoo parlor, inking a permanent commitment to him into her skin. Till death. She had no idea it was evidence. Deruba later described his own performance as Academy Award winning, and the recordings the FBI captured back him up. Because on those tapes, Valerie Cincinelli is not venting. She is not being rhetorical. She is not fantasizing. She is project managing 2 killings. She wanted Isaiah staged as a robbery. The fireworks money as the motive, clean, impersonal. The girl was more urgent. Valerie grew impatient as the weeks passed, and the teenager was still alive. She asked Deruba directly, "The hitman knows where she lives, right? He knows her route from school?" "Okay, so she leaves school," she said. "You said he knows exactly where she lives, right? So what's the problem?" And when Deruba reported back that the hitman wouldn't act near the school, too visible and too risky, Valerie's patience broke. "Run her over," she said. "How about that?" Prosecutors later quoted a conversation from May 8, 2019, 9 days before her arrest. Deruba tells her, "I'm just stressing about it, because it's going to happen." And Valerie replies, cold, impatient, annoyed, "You say that every weekend for the past month." That is the voice of a person frustrated with the pace of 2 murders she is paid for. That is not venting. That is a customer complaining about a delayed delivery. On May 13, 2019, 4 days before the arrest, they discussed alibis. Deruba brings up the question, what happens when police come asking where you were? What is your story? Valerie suggests the fireworks robbery angle. Isaiah killed for the cash in his car. A random stick-up gone wrong. Deruba pushes on it. Killed over fireworks? And she clarifies, "No, the money that you have from selling them. Somebody robbed him." Exactly. She had an answer ready. She had been thinking about it. She had rehearsed the conversation in her head. Her defense attorney, James DeAngelo, would later argue forcefully that she was venting, fantasizing, that she never truly believed a hitman would act, that the $7,000 was a loan for Deruba to invest in gold, not a payment for murder. But she withdrew $7,000 in cash. She converted it to gold, specifically to hide the trail. She gave it to a man she believed was a killer. She cyberstalked a 13-year-old girl 130 times. She rehearsed her alibi. She told a man she loved to run her over. When he pushed back on the timing, she said, "I don't have a problem with it." These are not the actions of someone venting. There was one final step. One moment the FBI needed to make the case airtight. They needed Valerie to believe the job was done, and for that, they needed Isaiah Carvalho. Imagine the FBI sitting across from you and saying, "We need to tell you something. Your wife put a hit out on you." That's the moment Isaiah Carvalho's life split in two. "It was the craziest thing I had ever experienced," he would later say. He agreed to help. He had no real choice. The woman he had shared a bed with, built a family with, had paid someone to shoot him. His only power in this situation was to participate in catching her. On the morning of May 17th, 2019, Isaiah sat in a car at a marina on Long Island. FBI agents placed broken glass on the floor of the vehicle, scattered around the footwell. Isaiah hunched forward into the passenger seat, slumped, motionless, eyes closed. They took the photograph. At approximately 10:10 in the morning, on the direction of the FBI, a detective from the Suffolk County Police Department drove to Valerie's home in Oceanside. He knocked on the door. When she answered, he told her the news. Her estranged husband had been murdered. Deruba was standing behind her in the doorway, recording device running. And Valerie, who had spent months planning this exact moment, the moment she would finally be free, the moment the pension was hers alone, the moment her problems dissolved in the marina water. She reacted exactly the way she had presumably rehearsed. "Are you kidding me?" she sobbed. "This doesn't feel real right now." The detective offered condolences. He said someone would be in touch. He left. The door closed. And the woman who had just been told her husband was dead, still shaking, still wiping her face, turned to her boyfriend and immediately began working the problem. Prosecutors would later put it in plain language in court documents. Almost immediately after the detective left the home, Cincinelli began to discuss her alibi, specifically what she would tell the police if she were to be questioned. Tear streaks on her face, and she is asking Deruba what their story is going to be. Approximately 40 minutes later, at 10:48 in the morning, an FBI agent, posing as the hitman, sent Deruba a text message. Attached was the photograph. Isaiah Carvalho appearing to be dead in his car. Alongside it, a demand for an additional $3,000 to complete the second killing. The 13-year-old girl. Deruba showed Valerie the photo. And this is the moment the obstruction charge was born. Because Valerie saw that photograph, the photograph of her husband's corpse, and her immediate instinctive reaction was not grief, was not horror, was not anything that a human being should feel in that moment. It was containment. She told Deruba to delete the photograph. She told him to delete their text messages. She told him what to say if the police asked him questions. And she reached for her own iPhone and began deleting images from it herself, with the full awareness of a 12-year law enforcement veteran that she was destroying federal evidence in real time. Outside, the FBI was already moving. They came through the door within minutes. Valerie Cincinelli was arrested in handcuffs, walked out of her own home on Long Island. As she was led to the car, reporters were already gathering. Dateline crews, NBC, local news. In that footage, she looked directly at the camera. "I'll be acquitted," she said, "because I did not do this." She had no idea what was on the recordings. The federal complaint was filed the same day. 2 counts of use of interstate commerce in the commission of murder for hire. 1 count of obstruction of justice. Each murder for hire count carried a potential sentence of up to 10 years. The obstruction charge, up to 20. Combined, Valerie Cincinelli was facing the end of everything she had built. The NYPD suspended her immediately, without pay. She was held at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn. No bail. The federal judge, Sandra Feuerstein, ruled she was a danger to the community. In her ruling, the judge used a phrase that has stayed with me. She described Cincinelli as showing a lack of impulse control and remorse. Lack of remorse. From a woman who had sobbed on a body cam 45 minutes earlier. As federal prosecutors laid out their case in the days and weeks that followed, the full picture emerged, and it was worse than the early headlines had suggested. The obstruction charge was not incidental. Valerie had, in the minutes between the detectives leaving and the FBI arriving, attempted to delete images from an iPhone. Evidence. She knew exactly what she was doing. She had spent years as a law enforcement officer. She understood what phone records meant in a federal investigation. She deleted them anyway. Meanwhile, the 2 men whose deaths she had arranged were alive and talking to investigators. Isaiah Carvalho told the FBI something important. He had never abused Valerie. The story she had told Deruba was constructed. It was the setup for everything that followed. And Deruba had his own version of events to contribute. Months of recordings, dozens of conversations. Valerie's voice, in her own words, laying out exactly what she wanted and exactly why. The FBI did not need to theorize about motive. She had explained it herself, on tape. The pension. 12 years of service, and a divorce was going to cut her retirement in half. The girl. The jealousy had been building for more than a year. To Valerie, a 13-year-old child was a rival, a competitor for Deruba's attention and money, 130 internet searches, language in the recordings that prosecutors called deep-seated jealousy and resentment. The murder for hire charges should have been airtight. But here is where the story takes one more unexpected turn. And it is the turn that still makes Isaiah Carvalho lose sleep. When the case finally moved toward resolution in 2021, the murder for hire charges were dropped. Not because Valerie was innocent. The evidence had not changed. But prosecutors and defense negotiated a plea deal, and the government accepted a guilty plea to a single count. Obstruction of justice. The charge stemming from the deleted iPhone images. Her attorney's position throughout had been consistent. In a defense memo, he wrote, "In a broken and compromised state, Ms. Cincinelli uttered the unthinkable and dangerous words directed at her soon-to-be ex-husband and John Deruba's daughter." He argued she was medicated after a shoulder surgery. He argued Deruba had provoked her. He argued the government was overreaching. The government's counter-argument was also consistent. She withdrew the cash. She converted it to gold specifically to avoid a paper trail. She handed it over. She monitored the progress of 2 planned murders for months. She rehearsed an alibi. She cyberstalked a child. These are not the acts of a person fantasizing. This is a conspiracy. But there were practical problems with the trial. Deruba was the central witness, and Deruba had his own criminal record and his own pending issues. The defense would tear into his credibility. The chain of custody on the gold coins had gaps. And for whatever reasons, federal prosecutors weigh when they weigh these things. The risk of a jury walking on the murder for hire charges was too high. The plea deal was pragmatic. It also meant that the words that mattered most, the words murder for hire, never appeared next to Valerie Cincinelli's name on a conviction record. She pleaded guilty to obstruction of justice on April 16, 2021. At the plea hearing, she cried. She told the judge she had deleted images from an iPhone with the intent to obstruct a federal grand jury investigation. "I know what I did was wrong," she said. "I'm truly sorry, Your Honor." Isaiah Carvalho did not believe her. The question that pulls at you, the one that keeps you awake after reading all of this, is not what she did. We know what she did. The question is why a person gets there, not the surface motive, not the pension, not even the jealousy of a child. The deeper question, the internal architecture of someone who wears a badge to work every morning and comes home to plan 2 killings. The pattern is visible long before 2019. A restraining order from her first husband obtained in 2014. A disciplinary action in 2017 for feeding confidential NYPD information to her civilian boyfriend. A service weapon pointed at Deruba's face in 2017. Mutual protective orders between them in late 2017 and early 2018. The March 2018 phone call. "I hope your daughter dies." Repeated domestic incidents with Isaiah that put her on modified duty at the NYPD. 130 internet searches on a 13-year-old child. None of this started in 2019. This is a pattern that goes back decades. Federal Judge Sandra Feuerstein, in denying Cincinelli bail after her arrest, described her as someone showing a lack of impulse control and remorse. That phrase, lack of impulse control, is doing a lot of work. What prosecutors saw, and what the recordings confirmed, is a woman for whom other people existed primarily in relation to her own needs. When those people served her needs, she was, as Deruba said, unbelievable. Warm, magnetic, someone you wanted to be around. When they stopped serving those needs, when Isaiah filed for divorce, when Deruba spent weekends with his daughter, when the world stopped arranging itself around her expectations, the response wasn't grief. It wasn't adaptation. It wasn't negotiation. It was elimination. A 13-year-old girl who had done nothing except exist in her father's life and accept his gifts. Valerie Cincinelli looked at that girl and saw something that needed to be removed. Permanently. There is a word for the inability to extend basic empathy to people who no longer serve a function for you. Professionals who study this kind of thinking have a clinical vocabulary for it. But you do not need the clinical vocabulary to recognize what it looks like in practice. It looks like a woman standing in her living room, tears still drying on her face, asking her boyfriend how quickly they can delete a photograph of her dead husband. It looks like a 12-year veteran of the domestic violence unit telling another woman's father, a man she claimed to love, that she hoped his daughter would die. It looks like gold coins and alibi rehearsals and matching tattoos with a man whose murder she had already tried to pay for. Her defense attorney argued she was a good person, pushed to a breaking point, and standing in the wreckage of a 12-year career, 2 children, a marriage, and a relationship, with a federal conviction and an empty house on Long Island. Valerie herself said something that almost sounds like insight. "I can't believe that I allowed myself to get to that place," she told the judge. "That dark place." Almost sounds like it. But Isaiah Carvalho wasn't buying it. "I think her tears were because she got caught," his divorce attorney told reporters outside the courthouse. "I don't think she's remorseful in any way." The man who spent a morning hunching over in a car with broken glass scattered around him while FBI agents photographed him, the man who still looks over his shoulder every single day, had a simpler read on the woman crying in front of the judge. "I really believe she did think she would get away with it," Carvalho told Inside Edition. "She went through with it. She took the gold coins out. She had every intention of going through with it." October 29th, 2021, Federal Courthouse in Central Islip, New York. Valerie Cincinelli, 36 years old, stood before U.S. District Judge Joanna Sabert for sentencing. She had been in custody since her arrest in May of 2019, 2.5 years at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn. No bail had ever been granted. Judge Sabert had inherited the case only months earlier after the original judge, Sandra Feuerstein, was killed in a hit-and-run in Boca Raton, Florida in April 2021. The case was reassigned. A new judge, a clean slate for a defense team that had been arguing for leniency for 2 years. At sentencing, Cincinelli spoke directly to the judge. She said she acknowledged she was wrong. She said she accepted responsibility. She said she couldn't believe she had allowed herself to reach that dark place. She wept. She told the judge that for over 2 years, she had not seen her son. Isaiah Carvalho was there. He did not speak publicly, but his attorney told the court that Carvalho believed Cincinelli would find a way to finish the job once she was released. He asked for the maximum sentence, 5 years. The assistant U.S. attorney, Catherine Mirabile, wrote in her sentencing memo, "This conduct is particularly egregious, considering Cincinelli was a uniformed NYPD officer at the time of her crimes." Judge Sabert sentenced Valerie Cincinelli to 48 months, 4 years in federal prison with credit for time already served. Prosecutors had sought the full 5 years. The defense had asked for time served, immediate release. Judge Sabert took the middle path, 1 year below what prosecutors wanted. With time already served, 30 months in custody, she was eligible for release within months. She had resigned from the NYPD in March of 2021, shortly before the guilty plea, ending a 12-year career that had once meant something. The murder for hire charges against her were formally dismissed as part of the plea agreement. John DeRuba was never charged with any crime related to the murder for hire case. He had been an FBI informant. He did multiple interviews with Dateline and told his side publicly. Isaiah Carvalho walked out of that courthouse still afraid. According to federal prison records, Valerie Cincinelli was released in October of 2022, having served approximately 3.5 years total. She is currently, according to public records, working as a personal trainer at an organization called a Second You Foundation, a nonprofit founded by a man named Hector Guadalupe, who himself spent a decade in prison. The organization's stated mission is to help formerly incarcerated people build new lives. Isaiah Carvalho checks the locks on his doors. He looks over his shoulder every day. "There is not a day that goes by that I'm not afraid for my life," he told Inside Edition in early 2022, 8 months before Valerie was released. Here's the detail that stays with me: the tattoos. While John DeRuba was wearing a wire for the FBI, while he was recording every conversation, building the case that would send Valerie to federal prison, the two of them got matching ink, till death. His idea, part of the cover, part of the performance, and she got it, happily, enthusiastically. A woman who had paid $7,000 to have him dead within the year, his daughter too, sitting in a tattoo parlor with him, inking a permanent commitment into her skin. Till death. She had no idea it was evidence. She had no idea the man holding her hand in that chair had already chosen the people who would arrest her. Valerie Cincinelli spent 12 years learning to read people. 12 years in a domestic violence unit, trained to watch for the signs that a person is dangerous, that something beneath the surface is about to break open. She never saw it in herself, and she never saw it in him. So here's the question I want to leave you with, and I want to hear what you think in the comments. Valerie Cincinelli pleaded guilty to obstruction of justice. The murder for hire charges, the ones that described who she actually was and what she actually tried to do, were dismissed. She served less than 4 years. She is out. She is free. She is working a job, posting on social media, rebuilding a life.
2 cases down, and I want to warn you. This last one is the one that actually kept me up, because DeAngelo was a ghost, and Cincinelli snapped under pressure. But Daniel Holtzclaw, he didn't snap. He didn't hide. He built a system. a deliberate, calculated system to find the most vulnerable women he could, women he was certain nobody would believe. And for months, he was right.
Do you recall putting your pants in her mouth?
I don't.
Would you recall that if you did it?
If I did, yeah.
Please don't make me do this, sir. Don't make me do this, sir.
They found some pubic hairs. Could they be yours?
No, that's...
Said, well, who am I going to call? The police? On the police?
The 29-year-old was convicted last month on 18 counts, including 4 counts of first. 18 women testified that the...
June 18th, 2014. I need you to picture this moment with me. Northeast Oklahoma City. Almost no cars. The kind of dark that swallows street signs whole. A 57-year-old grandmother is behind the wheel of a 2004 Pontiac Grand Am, driving home from a friend's house. She's got the radio low. She's thinking about nothing in particular. She has no reason in the world to be afraid. Then, red and blue lights bloom in her rearview mirror. She pulls over. The officer who walks toward her car is enormous. 6'2", 270 pounds, built like he never stopped playing linebacker. Because until recently, that's exactly what he was. The badge on his chest reads, Oklahoma City Police Department. His name tag says, Holtzclaw. He tells her she was swerving. She wasn't. But you don't argue with a badge at 2 a.m. on an empty street. Not when you can see the gun on his hip. Not when there's no one else in either direction for as far as you can see. She puts her hands flat on the roof of his patrol car, just like he asks. He pats her down. And then, something shifts in him. Something she feels before she can name it. A change in the quality of his silence, in the weight of his hands. In that split second, she understands, with the absolute certainty that fear gives you, that something is very wrong. What happens in the next 20 minutes will eventually unravel one of the most disturbing police corruption cases in modern American history. 13 women, a predator so certain of the silence he had engineered, so confident in the system he had spent 6 months building, that this particular night, he stopped her without even running her plates first. That was his mistake. The only one he ever made. And here's what I keep coming back to every single time I go back through this case. We only know any of it because of one woman, one grandmother who made a decision in the worst moment of her life. She knocked on a locked door at 4 a.m, and everything, the investigation, the 13 women, the trial, the 263 years, everything began with that knock. Let me take you back to where this really starts. December 10th, 1986, the U.S. territory of Guam. When I first started going deep on the Daniel Holtzclaw case, I expected to find something early, some flag, some moment that explained everything that came after. What I found instead was a story that looked from the outside completely unremarkable. His father, Eric Holtzclaw, was a white American who would eventually serve as a police lieutenant in Enid, Oklahoma. His mother, Kumiko, was Japanese. The family settled on the Oklahoma plains. Daniel grew up in a law enforcement household. The badge, the uniform, the authority they carried were not abstract concepts to him. They were furniture. They were part of the air he breathed. At Enid High School, he became something close to a local legend. Not just a football player, a record breaker. 25 tackles in a single game. His name went up on the walls. He got a scholarship to Eastern Michigan University, played linebacker there too, and by all accounts was exactly the kind of focused, physically dominant young man who was supposed to go somewhere. He studied criminal justice. He knew what he wanted, the NFL. In 2010, the draft came and went. His name was never called. I've spent a lot of time thinking about that moment. The specific silence of watching a list of names being read and yours not appearing. Not because I think it broke him. Plenty of people miss the NFL and lead perfectly ordinary lives. But because of what he did immediately afterward. He joined the Oklahoma City Police Department. And here's the detail that matters. He was good at it, at least on paper. Early in his career, he received commendations. He worked the night shift, 4 p.m. to 2 a.m., on the northeast side of the city. He was young, fit, motivated. He drove a brand new all-black Ford Police Interceptor, the department's newest patrol vehicle, home every night. On paper, Daniel Holtzclaw was exactly what Oklahoma City wanted. Under the surface, something else was beginning. Slowly, so slowly that no one saw it coming until it had already been happening for months. Now I need to tell you something about Northeast Oklahoma City, because geography here isn't a detail. It's the whole foundation of what Holtzclaw built. These are streets where people fight just to get through the week, a neighborhood where the history between residents and police is long and complicated, where a patrol car means something different than it does 3 miles away in a wealthier part of the city. Daniel Holtzclaw understood this. He had been patrolling these streets long enough to know how power actually works on them. He had the badge, the gun, the power to arrest, or to look the other way. And he had something else, something most people never think about. He had the database. Every name he ran during a traffic stop left a digital trail, a records check in the department system. And if a woman he stopped had outstanding warrants, a drug arrest from years back, a history with prostitution, she had something to lose. Something that made the arithmetic of speaking up feel impossible. A drug charge versus a police officer's word. In a courtroom. In Oklahoma. She had a reason not to talk. Prosecutors would argue, and the evidence would support, that what Holtzclaw constructed over the following months was not a series of impulsive acts. It was a system, methodical, patient. He ran names. He evaluated records. He selected women based on a specific calculation. Whose silence could he count on? Whose word stacked against his badge would dissolve before it ever reached a courtroom? Most importantly, he targeted women who were already, in the eyes of the system, partially written off. According to the court record, the documented assaults spanned from December 2013 through June 2014. He would pull women over. Sometimes he offered them rides. He used the cover of a legitimate stop, searching for concealed weapons, checking for warrants, to get them into a position where they couldn't refuse. Then he escalated, groping, forced exhibitions, then worse. When it was over, he drove away, night after night, for months, and no one came for him. The first incident to make it to trial, December 20th, 2013. A woman I'll refer to as Shardarian Hill, because she later chose to speak publicly, was arrested on drug charges and transported to Southwest Medical Center for detox. She ended up handcuffed to a hospital bed. Holtzclaw came to the room. He closed the door. "I was speechless," Hill testified. "I was scared. I felt like I was in survival mode, so I had to do what he was making me do." She was handcuffed to a bed. He had the badge. He had the gun. He had, in that room, absolute authority over whether she ever got out. When it was over, she said nothing, not because she didn't want to, but because she'd already seen exactly how that story ends. A woman with a drug arrest on her record, handcuffed to a hospital bed, versus a police officer with a badge and a department behind him. "He's in control," she said later. "He's the police. He has the badge. And I'm handcuffed to a bed." She was right to think no one would believe her. That is one of the most damning facts in this entire case. He knew it. He had built the whole thing on it. And for 6 months, he was right. But here is what I need you to understand as we go forward. Daniel Holtzclaw was not operating in isolation. He was operating inside a system. And that system, with all its assumptions about who deserves to be believed and who doesn't, was doing half his work for him. It would take a woman completely outside that system to bring it down. Her name is Janny Legons. And what happened the night she drove through that neighborhood is something I've gone back to again and again because the details of it tell you everything. Let me tell you who Janny Legons actually is, because this is the part of the story that matters more than almost anything else. She is 57 years old in June 2014. She is the director of a daycare center in Oklahoma City. She is a mother of 4 and a grandmother of 12. She has been to her friend's house, and she's driving home just after 2 in the morning through a part of the city she's just passing through. Not her neighborhood, not her usual route. She has no criminal record, no warrants, no drug history, nothing. In the specific language of what Holtzclaw had spent 6 months constructing, she was the wrong target, the one he should never have touched. And here's the detail that makes this particular night feel almost fated. Holtzclaw was already off the clock. His shift had officially ended. He was driving his department-issued patrol car home, the new all-black Ford Interceptor, when he spotted her Pontiac Grand Am with tinted windows and decided to follow it. He did not report the stop to dispatch. He did not run her plates before pulling her over. He had already logged off his patrol car computer at 1:58 a.m., 2 minutes before his shift ended. He just followed her. And then he lit her up. When he eventually ran her name, after he'd already pulled her over, after she was already standing with her hands on the roof of his car, there was nothing there, no record, no leverage, no file to use against her. Any predator operating a rational system would have let her go. But something had calcified in Daniel Holtzclaw over the previous 6 months. This had become so automatic, so woven into how he moved through his nights, that he simply continued. He had done this over and over without consequence. The silence had held every single time. He had stopped doing the math. He told her to lift her shirt, pull down her pants, said he was searching for a concealed weapon. Then he ordered her into the back of his patrol car. I want to stay with what Janny Legons was thinking in that back seat, because she described it in detail, on television, in court, to reporters, and the specificity of it is almost impossible to sit with. She kept her eyes on his holster, on his gun. She deliberately did not look at his name tag. She had made a decision in real time that if she read his name, if she could identify him, he would have a reason to pull the trigger. So she kept her eyes away from it. She told him about her grandchildren, hoping something human in him would stop this. That didn't faze him one bit, she said later. She kept saying, "Sir, please don't make me do this. You're not supposed to do that, sir." He kept going, all while, she said, other cars were passing on the street outside. When it was over, he got out of the back seat, zipped up his pants, waited for her to collect herself and get back in her car. Then he walked to his patrol car and drove away into the dark. Janny Legons sat there for a moment. And then she made the decision that changed everything. "I decided right then," she would say later. "If he didn't kill me, I was going to tell on him." She called her daughter. Her family told her, "Go to the station right now, tonight. Don't wait, don't sleep, don't think about it. Go now." So she drove there with her daughter. And when she arrived at 4 in the morning, the front doors of the police station were locked. No one at the desk. A 57-year-old grandmother and her daughter standing outside a police building in the dark, trying to report a rape committed by a police officer. They knocked until someone answered. A supervisor came. She gave her statement, every detail, every second of it. By 4 a.m., no fewer than a dozen officers were either on scene, en route, or working directly behind the scenes. The sex crimes lieutenant had been contacted. Janny Legons was taken back to the location on Northeast 50th to point out exactly where she said it happened. Security camera footage from a nearby building, Camera 31, had captured the traffic stop on video. And Detective Kim Davis, a nearly 30-year veteran of the department, asleep at home next to her husband, who was also a police officer, was woken up and told to come in. This was, she was told, the kind of case that the whole department would be watching. She was on her way to meet Janny Ligons at the hospital before dawn. The machine was in motion. But here's something critical to understand. Janny Ligons was not the first woman to report Daniel Holtzclaw. On May 8, 2014, 6 weeks before Ligons was stopped, a woman identified in court documents as TM had filed a report with police. She said an officer had forced her to perform oral sex. That report existed in the system. It had gone nowhere. What Ligons did was different. Her report triggered an immediate full-scale response, in part because of who she was, a 57-year-old grandmother with no criminal record, a daycare director, someone the system was built to believe. The following afternoon, when Daniel Holtzclaw arrived at the Spring Lake Division Station for his 4 p.m. shift, 2 detectives were waiting for him. He had absolutely no idea what was about to happen. Or rather, he thought he did. And he was wrong in a way that would cost him everything. I've read the interrogation transcript, all of it. And I need to tell you what's in there, because it's one of the most psychologically revealing documents in this entire case. Detectives Kim Davis and Rocky Gregory take Holtzclaw to a small room in the sex crimes unit. Davis reads him his Miranda rights. He waives them immediately. Doesn't ask for a lawyer, doesn't go quiet. He talks. He answers every question calmly in a flat, even voice with almost no emotional inflection. When Davis tells him a woman has accused him of a sexual assault, he doesn't raise his voice, doesn't look shocked, doesn't stumble over his words. He says he admitted he made the traffic stop. He says he had her lift her shirt and pull down her pants to search for weapons. He says nothing sexual happened. Then he starts pushing them. He volunteers to take a polygraph. He signs a waiver authorizing DNA testing without hesitation. He asks repeatedly for them to pull the surveillance footage and the GPS data from his car. Get it done, he keeps saying.
And that's probably her destiny or whatever. I don't know.
She's like, what?
And I wish
well, we're not
involve her, Carrie.
Well, we're not gonna tell her. You're gonna have to explain whatever the situation is.
That's what happened.
You got any questions of all this? I mean,
I'm getting attacked now. I'm just feeling. I'm like, God bless. I want DNA. I want everything. I want get it done.
We're gonna put it to the front of the line, okay?
Get it done.
I can tell you, it usually takes a long time, but because of the situation, we will put it at the front of the line, okay?
Yeah.
Think about what that looks like from the outside. A man sitting across from 2 detectives who are investigating him for sexual assault. And he's the one urging them to hurry up and collect the evidence. After the interrogation, Detective Davis described his demeanor to a reporter from the Oklahoman. He was the most stoic, he was like interviewing a robot. His voice never changed, no inflection. He never raised his eyebrows. He just said, "No, I didn't do it. He's a sociopath."
Do you recall putting your penis in her mouth?
I don't.
Would you recall that if you did it?
If I did it, yeah.
Okay. Well, I think you really, in all honesty, you need to really double think about this. I mean, I got to be honest with you. It doesn't look really good.
Okay.
Okay. I mean, in what you originally thought, detectives just don't roll up in there for no reason.
Right.
Okay. And we just didn't pick you out. Okay.
Right.
I mean, there's a whole lineup there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But there's definitely enough here to bring you in here to start questioning you.
Right.
Okay. We knew you were on that stop.
Right.
We knew you were there.
Mm-hmm.
And we can watch a whole lot of actions being performed while you were there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And that's why she was trying to give you every out on the whole booby thing.
Right.
Okay. Now, is there any reason at all, even from whatever angle, because, you know, it takes a little bit to clear up those videos.
Right.
But any reason why your penis would be out?
No.
Nothing?
Nothing.
I want to be precise about what I think that calmness actually was. Daniel Holtzclaw had been doing this for 6 months. He had stopped women, run their names, and walked away clean every single time. No disciplinary record, no formal complaints that had gone anywhere. In his mind, the machine had been tested repeatedly, and it had never failed. He walked into that interrogation room, operating on the assumption that this story had the same ending as every other story. A woman's word against a cop's. He was not scared because, in his experience, there was nothing to be scared of. He was not performing calm. He was calm because he genuinely believed he was untouchable. Then, one of the detectives mentioned, almost as an aside, that his girlfriend had spoken to them already. His 25-year-old live-in girlfriend had given a statement, and that statement contradicted several things he had told the detectives during the previous 2 hours. Something in the room shifted.
You created some more work. Fixing to go. I just talked to Carrie.
Okay.
She said she was asleep when you got home and you did not try to have sex, and you did not have sex.
I did try to have sex.
She said you didn't. And I asked her, could you have been asleep? And you had kind of, no. And she said no. You did not try to have sex.
As much as I don't want to involve her, I tried to have sex with her and she was asleep. Carrie goes to sleep pretty early, about 9, 10 at the late.
Okay, but she would know if you tried. I'm a woman.
I know.
And my husband comes home in the middle of the night and I'm like, are you kidding me? I've been asleep. You said you twirled around her vagina.
I did.
And you put it in a little bit, and then she said, I'm tired. No.
I did.
She would remember that to tell me.
Shoot. Maybe.
She said you did not try to have sex.
And it's more personal because it's Carrie, but I did try to have sex with Carrie. I did.
I don't know what to say. I mean, because it just looks like I just caught you in a lie. And now I don't know what to believe.
I'm telling you.
I don't know what to believe.
Okay.
Because you tell me this, I go to verify it. She tells me the opposite, and now I'm wondering what you're telling the truth about.
Maybe because she doesn't know what the heck's going on.
No, she doesn't. I didn't tell her.
And I'm glad, but detectives calling her, any other officer asking her a question like that.
I know.
She may be scared. And I don't want to involve her, but
she's involved
that's
because
my girlfriend. That's like
you need her involved for you.
Right.
But now she's given the story that you're not given.
I'm telling you, I tried to have sex with Carrie, my girlfriend.
She is going to remember your weenie twirling around her hoo-ha. You remember that. I'm sorry, I don't care how much of a sleeper you are. You remember because it pisses you off in the middle of the night and you go, are you serious? Don't bother me with that.
Maybe you should call her and ask her if she's a deep sleeper. Because there's multiple times I've tried to do that. Multiple times we've had sex. Multiple times she has pushed me off.
You told me that you have sex every day, and she says you did not have sex today.
We didn't have sex today. No. We didn't.
Well, you said you have sex every day.
Mostly every day, yes.
So if I call her back, is she going to tell me that you'll have sex every day?
We did not have sex, but recently, mostly every day, yeah.
I'm a woman, and I know what it feels like to be woke up for sex, and I don't like that. And you remember it, and I don't believe you.
I'm telling you the truth. I'm sorry. I tried to have sex with my girlfriend. I did.
I don't have the body language on tape, though the video exists. But the transcript suggests the shape of what happened. A man who has been completely certain suddenly encountering the first piece of evidence that the floor might actually move. The interrogation ended shortly after. They took his badge, his handgun, his shotgun, his radio, his commission card, his uniform shirt and pants, his keys to the patrol car. He went home, indefinite paid administrative leave. And the detectives went back to the database. Here is how a predator's own system becomes the tool that dismantles him. While reviewing the Ligons case, Davis and Gregory remembered something from a few weeks earlier. The report from TM, the one that had gone nowhere. They pulled the file. They found the woman. She walked them through the route the officer had taken that night, every turn, every block, and it matched Holtzclaw's GPS record from his patrol car to the minute. That was victim 2. Then the detectives pulled Holtzclaw's records check history, every name he had run through the department's warrant database over the previous months. They cross-referenced it with his patrol car's automatic vehicle locator, the GPS system that tracked every stop, every turn, every location, time-stamped. They looked for women he had queried multiple times, women he had returned to, women whose names appeared in his log on nights when his car was sitting in places that matched their later accounts. They started making calls. One name led to another. I keep thinking about those detectives sitting in front of that screen, watching a shape emerge from the data. Not quickly, slowly. The way a photograph develops in a darkroom. At first, you're not sure you're seeing something, and then you are. And then you can't unsee it. 13 women! By the time the investigation closed before trial, 13 women had come forward, all of them black, most of them middle-aged, most of them from the Northeast Side. Most of them had records, drug arrests, outstanding warrants, prior contacts with law enforcement. The women ranged in age from 17 to their mid-50s, 17 years old. I want to stay on that number for a second, because she is not an abstraction. She was 17. She testified that Holtzclaw raped her on her mother's front porch. That is where she said it happened. Not in a patrol car, not in an abandoned lot, but on her mother's porch, in front of the door of the house where she lived. The DNA technicians found a small triangle-shaped deposit on the inside of Holtzclaw's uniform pants near the zipper. They identified it as belonging to an unknown female. Eventually, that profile was found to be consistent with the 17-year-old victim. The defense would argue secondary transfer. Skin cells on his hands from a routine pat search transferred to his pants. Innocent physical contact, the kind of thing that happens every shift. The prosecution argued something different, but I'm getting ahead of where we are.
Have to do whatever we can.
Here is shorts and a shirt. I don't know if the shirt will fit inside. Before I call Carrie.
Yes.
You tried to have sex with Carrie.
I tried to have my girlfriend, yes. That was in my bed, yes.
Do you ever cheat on her?
No.
So it's only Carrie right now.
Carrie.
Okay.
All right, man. Pants in this bag and just put the. I think you're gonna need to, unless you want to keep the shirt.
We're gonna need your radio too. We'll just kind of check it off as we go here.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
So we got the badge and that radio there.
First, I need to tell you about the woman who tried before Janny Ligons ever knocked on that door. Because this is the part of the story that most people never fully sit with. At least one woman, before June 18th, 2014, before Ligons, before any of this started moving, had already filed a report with police. TM had gone to the station. She had told them what happened. Nothing came of it. Because she had a record. Because she lived in a neighborhood where the system had demonstrated over and over that certain people's accounts were weighted differently. Because the institution that existed to protect her was wearing the face of her attacker. Terry Morris, one of the victims, described what it felt like to testify at trial. His lawyer dragged me through the mud. She said the emotional abuse of the trial, having her history laid out in open court, her credibility systematically attacked, lasted longer than the physical assault. The physical abuse only lasted that night. The emotional abuse, I don't think I'll ever be completely past it. She went to the stand anyway. Holtzclaw was arrested on August 21st, 2014, 2 months after Janny Ligons knocked on that locked door. He was originally charged with 16 counts. By the time prosecutors finished building their case, the number had grown to 36 counts across incidents with 13 women. He was fired from the department in January 2015. The termination letter from Police Chief Bill City included this line, "Your offenses committed against women in our community constitute the greatest abuse of police authority I have witnessed in my 37 years as a member of this agency." He pleaded not guilty. The trial was set for November 2nd, 2015. And here is what I want you to hold in your mind as we go into that courtroom. 13 women who had every structural reason not to be believed, in a system that had failed to believe them before, were about to walk into a room and tell the truth in front of an all-white jury. What happens next is not straightforward, and it shouldn't be presented as though it was. The trial began November 2nd, 2015. It lasted nearly a month. Before I walk you through what happened inside that courtroom, I need you to understand something about what those women walked into when they took the stand. Holtzclaw chose not to testify in his own defense. His attorney, Scott Adams, built the case around a single core argument. The victims were not credible. They had criminal histories. Their memories were inconsistent. They had motives. Civil lawsuits were already being prepared to fabricate or exaggerate their accounts. The cross-examinations were methodical and, by any account, brutal. Drug arrests from years back, laid out in open court. Inconsistencies in initial statements highlighted and amplified. One by one, 13 women sat in that chair and had the worst chapters of their lives used as evidence against their own testimony. This is, I should note, a legal strategy. But it is also a choice, and the choice tells you something. Outside the courthouse, protesters were gathering daily, members of the Black Lives Matter movement, families of the women, community members who had been following this case from the beginning. The jury could hear them from inside the building. At one point, the judge delayed proceedings and instructed the jurors to ignore the noise from outside. And the jury itself. 12 people, all white, 8 men, 4 women. 3 black men had been included in the initial pool of 24 potential jurors, and all 3 were dismissed during selection. The president of the Oklahoma City NAACP chapter expressed public disappointment. Benjamin Crump, the attorney representing 5 of the victims in civil proceedings, who had also stood beside the families of Trayvon Martin and Michael Brown, raised the issue publicly. The trial went on. Week after week, those 13 women sat in that courtroom, looked at Daniel Holtzclaw, and told the truth. Then, there was the DNA. Prosecutors presented the physical evidence on the inside of Holtzclaw's uniform pants. The pants detectives had taken the night of his interrogation, the night he had sat across the table urging them to hurry up and test everything. A small, triangle-shaped deposit of DNA had been found near the zipper. The DNA profile was consistent with that of the 17-year-old victim. The defense argued transfer. His hands during a routine pat search, they said. Skin cells. Innocent physical contact of the kind that happens a dozen times every shift. The prosecution argued that the location, the quantity, and the specific nature of the DNA sample made innocent transfer implausible. The jury was sent to deliberate, and then they stayed there over 45 hours, 4 full days, the longest sequestered deliberation in Oklahoma County history. Juror Daniel Speaks later described what happened in the room. At the start, he said, a number of his fellow jurors were leaning toward acquittal, specifically because they had trouble believing witnesses with criminal histories. Those are his words. The credibility of the women who had come forward, who had withstood brutal cross-examination, who had shown up in that courthouse day after day, was still, even at the end of all of it, in question for some people in that room. But then the DNA evidence came back up, and then the teenager's testimony, The moment she broke down crying on the stand, the visible weight of what she was carrying. Speaks described it. During her testimony, she became very emotional and cried. You could just see something different in her when she started talking about what happened. Something shifted. On December 10th, 2015, Daniel Holtzclaw's 29th birthday, Judge Timothy Henderson began reading the verdict. Guilty.
Follow these instructions. Everybody understand? All right. Please do.
Verdict, count 1, sexual battery. We, the jury, impaneled and sworn in the above entitled cause, do upon our oaths find as follows. Defendant is guilty of the crime of sexual battery and set punishment at 8 years. Count 2. Defendant is guilty of the crime of procuring lewd exhibition and punishment is set at 5 years. Defendant is not guilty of the crime of rape in the second degree. Defendant is guilty of the crime of forcible oral sodomy and punishment is set at 20 years. Count. Defendant is not guilty of the crime of indecent exposure. Defendant is guilty of the crime of forcible oral sodomy and punishment is set at 16 years. Defendant is guilty of the crime of rape in the first degree and punishment is set at 30 years. Defendant is guilty of the crime of rape in the first degree and punishment is set at 30 years. Count 30, sexual battery. Defendant is guilty of the crime of sexual battery. Let me ask the jury, is this your verdict, so say you all? Yes. Counsel, would you like to examine the verdict forms?
I've watched the footage of this moment, and I want to describe it to you precisely because it matters. Holtzclaw starts rocking, slowly at first. Then his shoulders begin moving. He bends forward, and then the sound comes out of him, loud, broken, filling the entire courtroom. Not a quiet cry, the kind of sound that makes people turn their heads. People who were there described it as almost theatrical in its intensity. A man who had spent months projecting absolute control, completely coming apart in public. At the defense table, he mouthed the words, "I didn't do it," in the direction of the jury. In the gallery, his father held his mother as the verdicts were read. Outside, the people who had been gathering for weeks heard the news. 18 of 36 counts, 4 counts of first-degree rape, 4 counts of forcible oral sodomy, sexual battery, second-degree rape, procuring lewd exhibition, stalking. The following day, Holtzclaw was placed on suicide watch in the Oklahoma County Jail. A deputy sat outside his cell to monitor him around the clock. On January 21st, 2016, Judge Timothy Henderson sentenced Daniel Holtzclaw to 263 years in prison. Consecutive sentences, every count stacked on the one before it. The maximum possible sentence, exactly what the jury had recommended. District Attorney David Prater stood in front of cameras afterward and said something I've thought about since. This is not a law enforcement officer who committed these crimes. This is a rapist who masqueraded as a law enforcement officer. Now I need to talk about the appeals, because this is where the story gets stranger than most people know, and I think it matters. Holtzclaw's attorney filed for a new trial within days of the verdict, claiming evidence had not been properly disclosed to the defense. Judge Henderson denied it immediately. In February 2016, a formal appeal was filed to the Oklahoma Court of Criminal Appeals. The central argument, the DNA analysis was flawed, the methodology was unsound, and the evidence had been misrepresented to the jury. Specifically, the defense argued that the minute quantity of DNA found on the pants was best explained by innocent indirect transfer. Skin cells via Holtzclaw's hands from routine pat searches, and that prosecutors had improperly characterized the evidence as derived from vaginal fluid, a claim the defense said was not scientifically supported. 6 forensic scientists, assembled by a Holtzclaw supporter, filed a formal report challenging the prosecution's analysis. The court refused to admit it to the record. What followed was a series of sealed proceedings. Oklahoma's Attorney General asked the state's highest criminal court to seal the records related to the appeal. And they did, without public explanation. Video surveillance cameras outside the courthouse captured high-ranking police officials and forensics lab employees entering through closed doors on days when even the defense attorneys weren't present. I've tried to understand exactly what was happening in those sealed rooms. I can't. The records are sealed. What I can tell you is what happened after. On August 1st, 2019, the Oklahoma Court of Criminal Appeals denied the appeal in a unanimous opinion. All 7 proposed grounds for reversal rejected. In a concurring opinion, presiding Judge David Lewis referred to Holtzclaw as a sexual predator. Holtzclaw's family and supporters called that description vicious and false. The defense petitioned the United States Supreme Court, arguing that consolidating 18 counts involving 8 victims into a single trial had fundamentally prejudiced Holtzclaw's ability to defend himself. On March 9, 2020, the Supreme Court declined to hear the petition. The conviction stands. Daniel Holtzclaw is currently held at the Lexington Assessment and Reception Center, though authorities have at times restricted public access to his records for security reasons. Now let me tell you about the media coverage, because this is something Benjamin Crump said that cuts to the heart of this case. He said, if this had been a serial officer rapist with 13 white victims, the case would have been on every television channel in America from the day of the first report. Instead, the Holtzclaw case received almost no national attention until the trial was nearly over. The Atlantic reported that mainstream media gave it relatively little attention. It was Black Lives Matter activists organizing on social media, showing up outside the courthouse, refusing to let the story disappear, who forced it into wider view. The race of these women is inseparable from why this happened in the first place, why he chose them, why he believed they'd stay quiet, why the earlier report from TM went nowhere, why it took a woman who fell completely outside his profile, someone whose clean record gave her a form of structural protection the others didn't have, to finally make the machine move. After the sentencing, juror Daniel Speaks said something I want to close with, because I think it's the truest thing said by anyone who was in that building. He said he believed the victims, not despite their histories, not after weighing them against their records. He said, for them to show up and testify, I felt like they truly wanted their story known, and they wanted justice. And 12 women who had their most painful histories laid open in a public courtroom. Who came anyway? Who sat in that room? Who looked at the man who had done this to them and told the truth? Let me tell you where all of them ended up. After the sentencing, a group of victims, including Janie Ligons and Shardarian Hill, filed civil suits against Holtzclaw in the city of Oklahoma City, alleging the department's failures had allowed him to operate without supervision. 7 women pursued federal civil litigation. In September 2022, their attorneys filed paperwork to dismiss the lawsuit with prejudice, meaning permanently unable to be refiled. What that means for those women, what they received or didn't receive, what they chose or were forced to accept, is not part of the public record. And Terry Morris, who said the defense lawyer dragged her through the mud on the stand. The physical abuse only lasted that night. The emotional abuse, I don't think I'll ever be completely past it. So where does this leave us? I've been going back and forth on how to end this, because there's no ending that feels clean. There's no moment where everything resolves and the lesson is clear and the system is fixed. What I know is this: Holtzclaw's case triggered a review of hiring practices and oversight procedures at the Oklahoma City Police Department. It did not end police sexual misconduct. These cases keep happening because of what Daniel Holtzclaw understood with perfect, deliberate clarity. There are people in this country who are systematically less likely to be believed, whose vulnerability can be calculated in advance, whose silence can be built into a predator's operating logic like a feature, not a bug. Any predator sophisticated enough to understand that asymmetry and willing to use a badge to exploit it has an enormous structural advantage. Daniel Holtzclaw is in prison because one woman refused to give him that advantage. She is 57 years old. She runs a daycare. She has 12 grandchildren. When she testified at trial, looking across a courtroom at the man who had pressed her face down in the back seat of his patrol car while other people's headlights moved past on the street outside, she said she was never scared, not during the trial, not once. Deep down, I wasn't scared, she said. I know other people were, but I wasn't. Maybe I should have been. I just knew he was guilty, and there was not a doubt in my mind that they could tell how guilty he was too. After the sentencing, she said she was still going to therapy. She said she had suffered a stroke in the aftermath of everything. The assault, the investigation, the trial, the months of waiting for a verdict. I just take it day by day, she said. She is still running her daycare. Here's the image I keep coming back to. The one I can't put down, no matter how many other parts of this case I think about. 4 a.m, Oklahoma City. A grandmother and her daughter standing outside a police station. The doors are locked. There's no one at the front desk. She had been sitting in the back of a police car less than 2 hours earlier. She had kept her eyes off the name tag because she thought reading it might get her killed. And now she's standing outside the building where the institution that had just violated her is headquartered. And she's knocking. She knocked until someone answered. That is what justice looked like that night. Not inevitable, not guaranteed, not produced by a system working the way it was supposed to. It was fragile, dependent on one person making a specific choice at 4 a.m, when every instinct of self-preservation might reasonably have said, "Go home, survive this, be quiet." She knocked anyway. And everything, the investigation, the 13 women, the trial, the 263 years, everything that followed began with that knock. Here's the question I leave you with, the one I come back to every time I see a patrol car sitting dark on an empty street at 2 a.m. What about the cases where that woman never comes? What about every predator sophisticated enough to never make the one mistake Holtzclaw made, to stay perfectly inside the profile, to only ever choose women the system has already decided to discount? How many are there right now? Running names through a database, doing the math, I don't have an answer. But I think about it every time I see that question mark hanging in the dark, with a badge on it. One last thing. On the night of the verdict, December 10th, 2015, his 29th birthday, one of the jurors approached Holtzclaw's family and girlfriend after the guilty counts were read and hugged them. His girlfriend took it as a sign that the juror regretted the verdict. She told ABC News she hoped that juror would one day come forward and say she'd made a mistake. ABC News tracked down that juror and asked her directly. She said she stands by every vote she cast. She said the hug was out of pity for a family destroyed by the actions of their son. All of the jurors they spoke to said the same thing. They are proud of the verdict they rendered. 263 years. Janny Ligans is still going to therapy, running her daycare, taking it day by day. She told him, "You got the wrong lady." She was right.
Detective Drew! We on the street, you're gonna meet your end! Detective Drew! A name that all the filthy criminals dread! Detective Drew! Drew! You can't hide from the law! Detective Drew! Drew! He's the justice of it all!
3 cases, 3 badges, 3 completely different methods. And honestly, the more I looked into all of this, the more one question kept coming back to me. how does this keep happening? Like, these aren't guys who slipped through the cracks once. DeAngelo was literally fired for shoplifting and still operated for another 7 years. Holtzclaw ran background checks on his victims using department systems, on duty, in a patrol car, in uniform. Cincinelli was assigned to the domestic violence unit while she was planning a murder. The system didn't just fail to stop them. In some cases, it actively handed them the tools. So, I want to know what you think. Drop it in the comments. Do you think this is a few bad apples, or is there something deeper going on with how these people get hired, supervised, and protected? Because I genuinely don't know where most people land on that. If this video got to you, subscribe. I put a lot of time into these and there's a lot more coming. And if you know someone who'd be into this kind of deep dive, send it to them. It actually helps more than you'd think. See you in the next one.